Hi, I'm Memunat Ibrahim. I'm a PhD student at the Australian National University. Today, I'm presenting our case study paper titled Expectations versus Reality of Conducting Ethnographic Research in Nigeria to Inform Autonomous Ground Vehicles Design. In the paper, we share the lessons from our experiences conducting the research in Nigeria and how institutional, geopolitical, and sociocultural factors affected the research. This paper offers some lessons for researchers or institutional policymakers thinking about how to best support inclusive research for technology design, especially those that involve underrepresented communities. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which this work is being conducted in Australia, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and pay respects to elders past and present. The story of this paper began in 2020, during which I traveled back to Nigeria from Australia to conduct ethnographic research in two Nigerian cities, Lagos and Abuja. When I arrived in Lagos for the research, I was shocked by how I was initially terrified of the Lagos road traffic and the road users, and this hindered me from conducting the research. Navigating this road was never a problem to me before, as I was born and had lived in Lagos as a local until 2020. However, upon returning from Australia as a trained researcher, I quickly realized that I had not only lost my confidence to navigate Lagos roads, I was also highly security conscious and only imagined unsafe scenarios when on the road. I reflected about this in my fieldwork as while on the road, I kept clutching my phone, tried to hide it, and ensure it wasn't stolen. I also tried to keep some distance from other pedestrians, especially men. I also kept thinking of the probability of a car swooping in front of me and then I'm kidnapped. This must have been because of how much I had to think about all this during my WHS, which means Work Health Safety Risk Assessment. They are now at the back of my mind. This was a moment of realization that begs the question, how did I get here? As I share our experiences, here are some questions I want you to keep in mind. How do institutional assumptions shape fieldwork research, the researcher, and the research outputs? And how do the field realities shape the researcher, the research, and the research outputs? And what do these mean for designing ethical research and research policies for technology design research? This work emerges from my PhD research, which explores the question, how do we design autonomous ground vehicles that are worthy of being trusted and used in African societies, using Nigeria as a case study? The detail of the research motivation is provided in the paper. In summary, Nigeria is understudied in this area of research, and we wanted to understand the Nigerian road transport system, its road users' lived experiences on road, and identify autonomous vehicles design factors for Nigeria from this. So we found ethnographic and qualitative methods to be most suitable for exploring this. To conduct the research, we first had to design an ethical research plan. To develop a robust and safe plan, we drew from the prior experiences of my interdisciplinary PhD supervisors, most of which had on-the-ground experiences conducting similar research in various countries, including South Africa. We also drew on my experiences as a Nigerian to identify some research considerations and risks in Nigeria, many of which we later found to be true while in the field in Nigeria. Some of the considerations that we proactively planned for include identifying viable participant recruitment channels in Nigeria, like considering SMS or text messages for recruitment. We also anticipated the cultural sensitivity of participants' remuneration, so we considered this as contextual and predefined the remuneration amounts in range. Given that we assessed the risk of the research in Australia, primarily based on desk research and my memory of Nigeria, we anticipated its insufficiency for Nigeria's realities. To accommodate unanticipated risk and adapt the plan to be suitable to the realities in Nigeria, we were flexible and responsive in our planning. In response to this, we also defined the research locations and sample size as range of numbers. To conduct the research as planned, we needed some approvals from our institution. One of the major requirements for the fieldwork was getting the research ethics approval. We also needed the overseas travel approval to conduct the research in Nigeria. A work health safety or WHS risk assessment was required for these two approvals. The research ethics protocol drew on the Australia's National Statement on Ethical Conduct in Human Research for the research considerations. For the overseas travel, The institution relies on the Australia's DFAT for travel advisory and to identify, rate, and mitigate the travel risk. These sources had their benefits. However, in retrospect, we found them to be rigid and insufficient for our research in Nigeria, which posed a challenge for our research. How so? The Australia's human research ethics is great for identifying potential research factors and risks in Australia. As documented in the paper, we found it to be insufficient for anticipating and mitigating some likely Nigerian research risk. We also observed that some of the risks that were raised as likely by the ethics committee that we proactively planned for did not apply to Nigeria. Similarly, the Australia's default travel advice is a useful resource for identifying and rating overseas travel risk for average Australian traveling to Nigeria. But I am not an Australian, nor an average Australian going to Nigeria. I am a Nigerian who until recently had spent all her life in Nigeria. Given my lived experiences in Nigeria, we found the risk to be overestimated, and this is where the rigidity of the policies comes in. The policies had a one-size-fits-all view to the institution's diverse research communities and failed to see how, as Nigerian, my experiences in Nigeria had equipped me with skills that lessens the risk rating and likelihood and allow for that to be reflected in the risk assessment. So, to get the travel approved, I had to assume the role of an average Australian. I then had to think of every worst-case scenario and plan for them, even though I had never experienced them in Nigeria. And wearing this hypersensitive lens is how we got to that point. The point where I initially couldn't conduct the research as I wasn't comfortable enough to be on the roads or approach strangers to recruit them. I had to work on my mindset to shake the fear off immediately I realized this. Now, given my over 20 years lived experiences in Lagos, if spending a few months consuming these resources could affect my initial perception and experiences in Lagos, imagine how they might affect foreign researchers' view and interpretation of their research participants, and how long it will take them to realize this and adjust their views if they get to. Reiterating the question, how do institutional assumptions shape fieldwork research, the researcher, and the research outputs? In addition, we encountered other unexpected factors that our flexible planning allowed us to adaptively respond to as they emerged. Some of them were around getting consent from various participant groups, like learning local strategies for recruiting and getting consent from organizations and individuals, and also portraying my trustworthiness to them within seconds to minutes of meeting them. We also had to navigate the unexpected turns of events on road, like learning to conduct interviews without much preparations by carrying my key research tools, as shown in the image here, everywhere I went, while also considering the traffic flow in my planning. The last shocking factor was geopolitical. Nigerian governments unexpectedly and swiftly changed the Nigerian currency called Naira. Nigeria has a cash economy, so this caused a significant cash scarcity which affected my research. Bringing us back to the question, how did the research realities shape the researcher, the research, and the research outputs? This experience generated lessons on the need to conduct risk assessments on the ground, as well as consulting the locals on the research risk and what safety and informed consent might look like, and respecting their inputs, perspectives, and cultures in all of this. We also learned the benefit of drawing on prior experiences in research design and planning. For researchers particularly, in the field, it is important to expect the unexpected and be responsive and flexible with your plans, but also prioritizing your well-being to avoid fatigue because conducting fieldwork can be exhausting. Finally, what does this mean for designing ethical research and research policies for technology design research? We learned that one size does not fit all in institutional policies, especially for institutions with diverse researchers working with or in diverse communities, and that the resources and policies that shape our research design also affect the data collection, analysis, and the results generated. So, it is important to continuously reflect on and evaluate our assumptions and those of the resources we rely on, because at the root of inclusive technology design efforts is ensuring that the policies that shape them are inclusive and unbiased. Thank you for listening, and you can always reach out to me via these platforms.